this is Madhvi from TaroticallySpeaking.com, and today I'm here to talk about how you can go about learning your second tarot deck. Not the first one, but the second one. The, like once you've sort of familiarized yourself with a tarot deck, especially the what I like to call the first deck you should ideally uh, look at or study or learn, which in my humble opinion is the Universal Weight Tarot deck, right? I did a video about this, so I think I'll link it up somewhere in the thingy, the YouTube link thing, and also in the description I'll put the link there so you can go watch that video. But basically what I in that video I talked about why I prefer that you start your tarot studies with the Universal Weight deck. So but once you've mastered that deck, right, naturally there are so many decks out there in the market and you are like, so I want to learn a new deck. How do I go about doing that? How do I go about picking up a deck and studying it? Well, the process is fairly straightforward. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about that process. Okay. First and foremost, ideally, the deck that you will pick up or you feel drawn to or you might feel like picking up and studying will follow one of these two systems. Either it will go with the Universal Weight system or with the thought system. Now, what is the basic difference, you ask? Well, first and foremost, let me just pull the cards out. In the Universal Weight, you have card number 8 as the Strength card, and then you have card number 11 as the Justice card, and then you've got people on the minor arcana cards, going through the different situations and stuff. So there's that's kind of what helps us launch into the story of the card, actually, to be honest. But in the thought deck, what happens is you have where is it? Yeah, card number 8 is Adjustment, which is very similar to the Justice card, and card number 11 is Lust, which is very similar to the Strength card. So those, that's in the major arcana. The positions of these two cards are swapped. But then once you start looking at the minors, you'll realize that the illustrations or the artwork, although very, very beautiful, right? Apart from the court cards, you don't see people in the images. You just see the suit emblem, lots of swords in the sword suit and lots of cups in the cup suit, for instance. And, you have in let's say, for instance, now we have 6 of cups, there are 6 cups. Yeah, 7 of cups, there's 7 cups, that sort of thing. Yeah, you go into the pentacles, it's very beautiful, but then see 3 of pentacles, you see 3 pentacles, and a design. There is a method, of course, to interpreting this, but there's no people, so it's very difficult to kind of get into the story. But that is the basic sort of difference. You have your Strength card and you have your Justice card. The positions are swapped in the major arcana, and in the minor arcana, the pip cards of the thought based decks will not have people on them for the most part, whereas in the Rider-Waite or Universal Weight, you will have people in there. So those are the two basic systems that were kind of, it just happened that way, that the decks came out this way, and the people who made the decks afterwards started following either of these systems, and they kind of kept, they kind of followed it, like these were templates, for instance, and then they created their own decks with different themes but based on this basic template. So which is why actually in the previous video I said learn these decks first, because that way your foundations are very strong and then you can just pick up any deck. So then let's take so how do you do that? Obviously this is what we're going to talk about in this video. So either system is there. There's a Rider-Waite and there's a thought. So step number 1 is identifying which system your deck follows. Okay, so for example, now I have with me one of my old sort of favorite decks. This is the Ancient Egyptian Tarot by Clive Barrett, and in this deck, the Strength card is card number 8, and the Justice card is card number 11, right? And of course, we see in the Minor Arcana, let me hold this closer, we have people in the picture, and stuff's happening around them, and it does follow basically a lot of the how do you say it, a lot of the imagery follows the basic sort of template laid down by your uh, Rider-Waite system, right? The other deck that I have here is the Secret Tarot, and in this deck, however, the card number 8 is Justice, right? Am I holding it right? Can you see the picture? Card number 8 is Justice, and it's card number 11, which is the Strength card. So this does, in the Major Arcana, kind of, it does follow the thought sort of system. However, if we look in the Minor Arcana, we do see that the, let me hold it closer. In the Minor Arcana, though, we do see that there are people in the picture. So you could say this is kind of a sort of a hybrid. That's what I like to call it, a nice hybrid between the the thought and the Rider-Waite systems. It's like the best of both worlds, yeah. So it helps, because then you can pick up on the subtle sort of nuances of one system, and go with it and learn that system. And even in the Minor Arcana, usually I do see that when you have these hybrid sort of cards, they do follow a template that was pretty much laid down by the Waite cards. So let's say in our example, let's say we pick up either of these two decks, or you could pick up any deck that you like. But this is one way of establishing which template it's basically following. Now the second step here is to know what comes with it. What are the resources that are available along with these decks? So now the Ancient Egyptian Tarot, this deck comes with a book, okay? And the Secret Tarot comes with what is popularly called as the LWB, or the Little White Book, because it's little and it's white. And because it's a low scarabeo deck, you've got various translations. You've got the English, Italian, Spanish, French, German, and even Portuguese. So so if whatever language you follow, you can read through it. Okay, so the LWB, and we have the actual book. Okay, now once we figure that out, let's look at the theme. Usually the name of the deck does sort of reveal the theme. For instance, now this Ancient Egyptian Tarot, so all the characters in the imagery are derived from your ancient Egyptian myths, right? And even in the Minor Arcana cards, the imagery that you do see is derived very largely from life back in ancient Egypt, right? The people, the dresses, the environment, the scenery, all of it is very much sort of derived from ancient stories or legends, even sometimes, or everyday life back then, how it was. Okay, so that will tell you the theme of this deck. Now, for instance, now let's look at the Secret Tarot. What would be the theme here? Sometimes you just look at the artwork, and you see, oh, okay, this is very cute, this is very fairy tale-y, very maybe comicsy kind of a theme. But many times you have your book or the LWB that can also shed some light on the theme. Now let's have a look. See now how they have put it. There is a story here. It's very interesting. There's this whole land of secrets. This land is a magical world inhabited by angels and devils, by enchanted beasts and extraordinary characters, whose deeds become important exemplary events. And then there's a whole story here, and I believe we do see characters from the major arcana showing up here. But then it is followed by the card names and just the keywords da, 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 till here. And then you see there's the minor arcana, the cup, the a suit of chalices or cups, and then there's a story about the kingdom of pleasure, right? And there's a whole story till here. And then you have the pentacles suit, again just the keywords upright, and then you have the whole story here about the kingdom of richness. I hope I'm holding it up right. And then you have the sword suit, just keywords, and then we have the kingdom of sorrow, the story, and finally the suit of wands and the kingdom of the work of man. So so in this LWB, what they have offered is just basic keywords for the upright meanings, and then a story. So you can actually read the story and get a lot more information after while you're looking at the imagery. That's the that's actually me jumping ahead. But so step number one, just to reiterate, is to identify which pattern or which template it follows: Rider-Waite or thought, or it's a mix. If it's a mix, it's good. That's good too. Then whether it has a book or an LWB. What is the theme of the deck? Usually the name of the deck will tell you, the artwork will tell you, or sometimes you got to look into the LWB to see what the theme is. Now, the card story, that's step number 4. And this involves journaling, okay? So I will also link, put a link to the card story video on the screen somewhere. But meanwhile, basic step is to look in the book. The book, if the deck comes with a book, that is kind of more preferable than the LWB, because there's space for a lot more in terms of information and knowledge. Yeah. So there's a lot more to be gained, there's a lot more to be understood, and especially when, say, you're picking up something like the ancient Egyptian tarot, for instance, where if you're not familiar with the ancient Egyptian myths and stories and whatever, then this book can actually fill in the gaps. This book can open up. In fact, picking up decks like these, which are talking about different cultures, different civilizations, different myths, and that sort of thing, is good, because even if it's a little unknown, if the imagery pulls you in, buy it. I would say go for it. Why? Because that way you learn. That way your curiosity is sort of opened up, and you get to study and you learn something new, which otherwise you wouldn't have picked up a book and read about it, but now because of the cards you're learning it. So anyway, so look into the book and say, for example, how sweet, I opened it up on the lovers card page. So there's a lot of information here. This is the Kabbalah, or I would say the Hebrew word, not Kabbalah, but it has Kabbalah connotations, and the element, which is your sun sign, then the color, then there are the titles, then there's a whole lot of, there's the story here from Egyptian myth, what, this card is all about. And then we have interpretations, right? This is a good part. So this is the major arcana. Let's see what happens in the minor arcana. So we have one page now devoted to the minor arcana. There's a title. If there's an astrological sort of connection, it's there. There's this is also a lot to do with your thought system. Very interesting, because 2 of Wands is dominion in that. And then there's the stuff, the story, and then there's the interpretation. So there you go. The book offers a lot more in terms of knowledge and additional sort of information about the picture in the card. Okay. Now, how do you go about it? How do you go about now learning this? Should you just go and just read the book? Sure, you can do that. But what else is there? Here's a very simple method I follow. pick up a journal, pick up a notebook, whatever, follow your heart in that, whether you want to pick up what kind of journal. In that journal, okay, start with one card. The first card, for instance, the Fool card, or you want to start with the Minors, whatever your system of learning is. Pick up the card, okay? Look at the imagery. Go see my card story video for the process of looking into the card and the card story, okay? Read in the book or in the LWB, read about this card, the imagery, uh, what it has to say really, with the interpretations even. Now, for instance, if I have to look, here you go, this Fool card, right? See the subtle differences here. Since you already know what this Fool card means, this process becomes much simpler, because now in this LWB there's really not much in terms of information offered. Meaning wise, there's just a couple of keywords here, which is very nice, but that's it. Or you can look into the story and see how far the story of the Fool kind of pops up and is relevant in this big picture story. But then you're like, okay, what next? So see the subtle differences in this and this picture, right, between these two images. Since you're already familiar with what the Fool card is all about, it's easier to just sort of correlate. Okay, this, look at them, they're standing at the edge of the cliff, check, it's kind of the same. There's a doggy at their heels. It's a subtle difference here. The doggy is actually biting this guy's heels. Okay. Then look at his face. He's looking up in the clouds. And this guy in the secret tarot, he's looking at the doggy who is biting his heels. Right? Rest, pretty much everything is kind of similar, you could say. So now right away, there'll be a slight difference, I would say, in the interpretation. The basic ethos of the card will remain the same, but there'll be a little difference, associated with this slight change, right? The reason we look at these images and try to sort of compare and contrast is because the images from your Rider-Waite deck are your foundation images. Those are the meanings that you have built in your mind. These are the images that sort of drive the meaning for you. Then when you pick up a second deck, you compare, you contrast, you see the subtle changes, you see the subtle differences, and then you're like, for instance, now in this particular, the Rider-Waite deck, the doggy at the heels, right? You could look at it as, dog being your man's best friend kind of a thing. You say, okay, perhaps this dog is excited and wants to join this human, in his journey of adventure. Whereas now this doggy is biting this fool's heels. So now you say, oh, is this, doggy or animal sort of, where this doggy represents the friend angle, does this friend sort of want him to not go on this adventure, or is this friend trying to create hurdles or hampering the process of this guy's adventure? So obviously this is distracting him now. Now the meaning changes a little bit, now he's distracted by the fact that his friends are sort of telling him not to go on this adventure. He wants to go, but he's distracted by his friends who are, pulling him back and saying, please don't go, or they're probably putting hurdles in his path. And so that distracts him from his adventure. Whereas here, you can say that, okay, these friends are also eager for him either to just go on his adventure or they want to join him on his adventure. Now, this slight difference could affect the interpretation when you do it. So, and don't worry. Another concern, very interesting concern that sometimes comes up is, if there are these differences, won't they sort of affect the reading interpretation? Well, they can and they won't. Because when it has to show a certain meaning, the card shows up. Don't worry, your intuition processes these images very nicely, very wisely. So trust that intuition. trust your inner world, trust this world of imageries, okay? So even if the imagery does change slightly and does change the interpretation a little bit, it'll only pop up in your reading when it wants to show you that meaning, okay? So don't worry on that score, just don't, okay? Trust me, I've been through this, I've played with many decks. Okay, so that's how you use. Now let's see how this compares with your ancient Egyptian tarot image. Here you again have this fool. Let me hold it up a little bit so you can see. Here we have this fool. He's there's the cosmic egg behind him, and there's the dog. And it's been a while since I've played with this deck, so if I mess up on the meaning and imagery, please forgive me. But we have a very similar imagery, and again, this one is going to step not off the cliff and into some sort of cosmic waters and stuff like that. So there is that little difference, right? It's bright daylight here, and this is just like kind of the beginning of creation itself kind of energy there. So again, the meanings will differ, and because there's a whole lot of symbolism here, you can just refer to the book. You can look into the book. Where is it? Where is it? Here you go. And there's a whole lot of stuff here, right, which will tell you what it means. Which is what is what. All the stuff is here. So this the full sort of information about the symbols and the meanings will you need to refer to the book. But the basic concept of the card, you can go back and forth and see, okay, what is the similarity, what is the difference? Obviously, because this is a totally different, the ancient Egyptian tarot and your Rider-Waite, the world sort of, you can say, of the deck is totally different. So there will be very big differences in the imagery. Here, not so much. Maybe with the secret tarot, it's kind of similar, but with the ancient Egyptian, it's going to be very different. So what are the differences? What are the similarities? You can look in the book and get that information. And so now what you will do is, in your journal, first write that down, okay? And if you want to see the card story video, go back and see that. In that, the process, I think I've kind of outlined the process. Again, let me just briefly tell you. First, look at the environment, then look at the person, then look at the different symbols which are there in the environment and the person. Then try to derive what they mean. Sometimes the meaning is there in the book, sometimes it's common sense, right? Then you have that. From that, you can derive your keywords, or you can straight up first go write the card story and then come back and write your keywords for upright and reversed. Okay. Sometimes the book also offers these meanings, and the LWB also offers these meanings. So these resources are there. These are given by your deck creators. These resources are there for you. And then, of course, you have the card story method. You add that in. And so my suggestion here is, every time you pick up a new deck, okay, go through these steps, which is, first identify which system it follows, Rider-Waite or Thoth. Then look at the resources that are available, if there's an LWB, if there's a book. Then based on the name and looking into the LWB a little bit, you arrive at the theme. So you get the sort of world that the imagery of this deck lives in. And in step number 4, compare and contrast it with your basic sort of deck, the theme which it follows. Once what we did in step 1, compare and contrast the card imagery. Okay, then sit in your journal, sit down and write the card story. But before you do that, look at the environment, look at the person, look at the symbols, right? That's the card story method. So do that, write your card story, and then look into the LWB or the book again for the interpretations, whether they've given any keywords, and write your own as well as those, if and that way you do that with each and every card of the deck. And so what this process does for you is that you are not just engaging with the image of the deck that you want to learn, you're also comparing it and contrasting it with your foundational deck. and you're seeing the subtle similarities and differences within the imagery. Okay, so you know, and your brain and your subconscious is registering it, and while you're playing with this, while you're doing that whole process of writing it down in your journal, including writing the card story, the whole thing is, automatically getting saved in your subconscious. It's a very, very beautiful process that happens. So in this way, once you're done with doing this process, all the 78 cards, you will have really grasped that deck. So even, let's say, and this, I've seen this happen with me, sometimes you do that with the deck, and then you say, okay, fantastic, and you put that deck aside, and you don't go back to it for months, and months later, sometime later, you're like, oh, that deck, and you pull it out, and you're looking at the cards, and you remember, you suddenly remember, looking at the images will spark that memory. And that's how beautiful it is, because it's all about the visuals. So yeah, this is a very simple and straightforward process, how you can go about learning your second tarot deck. If you have any questions for me, it has been sort of, couple of you have emailed me and said that, okay, can I do a live sort of Google Hangouts kind of a session? So, I mean, would you like it if I did something like that? Would you like to participate? Let me know in the comments, or you can just email me separately. Whatever works for you, let me know if you would participate if I did a Google Hangouts where I answered your learning questions. I'm not going to do live readings or anything, just learning questions. Yeah, I can do that. That'll be fun. If there's any queries that you have about the learning process, I could answer that. I'd give it a shot. Um, if you want me to do a Google Hangouts, let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Click on the subscribe button so every time I upload a new video, you get a notification which says, Madhvi has uploaded a new video, come watch. Okay, and if you have any questions for me, any videos you would like for me to make, any special requests, anything at all like that, just put that in the comments below and let me know. Talk to me, yeah? So, till I see you again, stay good, be good, and play with your tarot cards. See you next time. Bye bye.